There is no nobler calling in the world than that of a medical professional. But when the temptations of wealth and desire for fame outweighs the solemn oath of care all doctors swear to their patients, they can become the deadliest scourges upon the world as well. Give a doctor like that near unlimited funding and a desperate world's collective trust, and you got yourself a recipe for disaster. My name is Dr. Sarah Tracy, and this is how a group of such doctors turned the coronavirus pandemic into more of a living nightmare than it already was. I was one of the many doctors assigned to develop a vaccine for COVID-19. The project wasn't funded by any government. Everything from the research material to the wages were paid for entirely by a private pharmaceutical company I worked for. In fact, most of the stuff we did in our search for a vaccine was off the record, with practically no governmental supervision whatsoever. I'm ashamed to admit it, but we dipped into some pretty shady territory trying to find a way to make a vaccine that worked. Some of the experiments we did were of questionable ethicality at best, and downright inhumane at worst. We needed to test our vaccines out to see if they worked. And since the virus only affected humans, we had to use humans to test the vaccine out. Some of the people we tested on gave their consent and were given generous compensation for their sacrifice. Others were homeless people we merely plucked off the streets, knowing that no one would miss them. But as cruel as those experiments were, nobody working on the vaccine could argue with the progress being made. The governmental organizations that should have been keeping tabs on us were too busy trying to maintain societal order to notice any of our less than legal activities. On the few occasions that a government worker did come visit the company headquarters for an inquiry, I got the distinct impression that they were just as desperate as everyone else for a way out to bring the world back to normal. They probably didn't mind turning a blind eye to a few broken laws if it meant solving the crisis. I'd like to say that all the horrible things we did was for the sake of the greater good, but that would not be entirely true. Yes, had we come up with a usable vaccine, we could have very well have saved the world from societal collapse because of the pandemic. But the truth is, none of us cared for anything more than our paycheck and the recognition that would come with creating the vaccine. We were all part of a business after all, from the board of directors at the very top to salaried researchers like me. We only really thought about how creating the vaccine would benefit us in the long run. And in the end, when we did find a formula for that elusive vaccine, not that it did anyone any good, we would have all been better off dying from the actual virus. Everyone who worked on the vaccine is to blame for what happened, but none more so than Dr. Jack Matthews. Dr. Matthews was the project head for the vaccine's development. He was a shrewd businessman with many connections in the pharmaceutical industry and connections in some very high places, but aside from that, he was a mediocre doctor at best. He barely even met the professional qualifications required to work on the project in the first place. The truth was, everyone else in the team was a better doctor than he was. Yet, he continually pushed us to work until we were at our very limits each day. When we researchers got home after each exhausting night at the lab, we'd console ourselves with the knowledge that we would all gain the recognition we deserved once the vaccine was finished and distributed. But after months of stagnated progress, Dr. Matthews started to grow impatient. Despite not being able to do anything himself, he kept demanding more and more from us. It got to the point when we were going through test subjects faster than we could procure them, legally or otherwise. At the rate we were going, we would soon make a dent in the homeless population so big that even the local police would have to take notice. Our current line of research was going nowhere, so we needed to search for a new course of action. To everyone's surprise, it was Dr. Matthews who found it. Vaccines work by stimulating the body's natural immune response with a weakened version of the virus it's meant to protect against. By doing this, the body is able to produce an antigen against the virus that will work even against the real deal, effectively making it harmless. It's kind of like training to shoot ducks by shooting clay targets first, so that you have the experience needed for the real thing later. The problem we've had with the vaccine was finding a way to weaken the coronavirus enough that it wouldn't cause the person to get sick, but not so much that it wouldn't elicit the immune response needed to make the recipient immune. Dr. Matthews proposed a solution so insane that the thought hadn't even crossed any of our minds. We would weaken the virus with another virus we create ourselves. He even brought the research papers for an obscure virus that would be a prime candidate for the procedure. According to his hypothesis, the effects of this virus and the coronavirus would effectively cancel each other out and make the user immune to both of them. It was a harebrained solution to be sure, but a solution nonetheless. And to be honest, we were running out of ideas and were willing to take what we could get at that point. I doubt he would have taken no as an answer anyways. Anyone who objected would have just been booted out of the project without pay or credit for the work they put in. And after months of toiling away at the vaccine, none of us wanted to take that risk. So we went along with Dr. Matthews' idea. In no time at all, we were able to produce a reliable, functioning vaccine that was shipped all across the world. We were given raises and showered with praise from the media, just like we all wanted. But as we celebrated the fruits of our labor, little did we know that we had just cemented our places in hell for what was about to happen next.